Hi, everyone. Welcome to Women in Robotics Ask Me Anything with Jasmine Lawrence. We're very excited to have her here with us today. I'm Laura. I'll be moderating the conversation. We will be recording this so that we can post it to YouTube afterwards. The way we've been running these is the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. And I will make certain they get asked throughout the process of this. We'll be running for about an hour. To get us started off, Jasmine, how did you get interested in science, engineering, and robotics? Like, what kind of brought you to that?
Great question. For me, it was movies and books. I was totally inspired by sci-fi, specifically a film called Bicentennial Man, the one with Robin Williams. I saw this movie and it painted a picture of a future that I was interested in being involved in, something I felt like wasn't set in stone or wasn't created yet. And so there was a lot of space for me to find my place and where I wanted to make my impact.
Cool. So you started your own company for hair and body care as a teenager. Was that before or after seeing Bicentennial Man? Did coming up with some of those formulas kind of also influence the interest in that stuff?
Yeah, it was actually after. So I was already a kid who was interested in math and science. Like my parents knew at an early age, like, don't buy me dolls. I'm not interested in that. Like I want a microscope. I want a craft kit, something where I can build and see the results of working with my hands. And so, yeah, what really inspired me in terms of formulating product was just the scientific method, right? To figure out, can I make something that works and really works repeatedly? And what happens if I change this or add this ingredient? So a lot of it to me felt more like cooking than chemistry, if I can say that. A lot more fun where you kind of just like a hint of that, a dash of that, and just taking note of the variations and the different formulas. But yeah, at the root of it, it was science, it was creativity, it was making something that would make a difference.
That's awesome. What was the process like growing your company as a teenager? And it's now like a national brand in like everyday stores like Walmart and Target.
Yeah, it's been a long journey. It will be 17 years this August. It started by just me going door to door to my neighbors, telling them the story of how I created the product, asking them what their hair concerns were, what their skin needs are. And, that would really inspire me to go home and mix a few different things. But I went door to door with the hair oil that I had made for myself, telling them the story of what happened to me, how I lost my hair at a young age, and how I just wanted to empower people to live happier and healthier lives by being aware of not just what they're putting on their bodies, but what they're putting in their bodies as well. My parents drove me to like a local beauty supply store, which is where we would normally shop for hair products before I started making them at home. And we talked to just the owner of the shop there, made an appointment, talked to him about, okay, you don't even have to pay me. I'm just going to leave this product here with you. You can put it on shelves, price it in whatever you think is fair. And then I'll come back at the end of the week and take like a portion of that. Like I really was just trying to figure things out. And it wasn't until maybe a couple years, maybe a year or two, I was invited to speak at or I was actually invited to compete at a teampreneur conference hosted by Black Enterprise. And I was on a pitch between me and these two other women-owned businesses. And I totally lost the pitch, like didn't win at all. But there was someone there a buyer from Walmart stores who loved my pitch, loved the story, and was like, we are interested in expanding, this category of products. So we'd love to fly you down to Arkansas and, have a talk with you about being in the stores. That just was just like one domino in a chain of events that has led to a lot of success, right? Coming strong with that pitch, bringing my best in that moment, not knowing who and what opportunities were in that audience, but just trying to tell the honest truth about what I was trying to do and have people latch onto that passion was extremely meaningful. And so when my local newspaper wrote a story about, me trying to sell products to local beauty supply stores, that story then got picked up by other major news outlets. And then eventually someone from Harpo Studios, which is Oprah's production company, picked up my story and was like, hey, we'd love to fit you in to this show. And so to go on the show and be like, yeah, so Walmart has reached out and said that they're interested was kind of a really great way to show like, hey, we're getting some visibility. If you want to be a part of this train of success, then like hop on. And so, you know, having that opportunity to go from 10 stores to 300 stores to 1,000 stores nationwide and kind of grow incrementally with a major retailer as a partner was phenomenal. And so it also gave me the courage to boldly reach out to and connect with other retailers who saw us really as a staple in the natural hair space.
Awesome. So you're currently a program or product manager at?
Product manager.
Product manager at X, which is previously Google X. What type of skills do you leverage that you learned from running your business in the day-to-day product management side?
That's a great question. I love that question because some people ask me the question of like, oh, how can you do both? Or like, why does it, for me, it's the same job in two different domains, right? I listen to customers, I understand what they need. In my role as CEO, I'm leading the team and figuring out what strategy we're going to take to execute across delivering our products. And I do a very similar job with, working at X, right? With the robots that we're building, trying to figure out what they should do, why they should do it, how do we enable that from an engineering perspective, and from a user perspective, what is that experience like, right? So it's very transferable. The biggest thing that I would say would be probably empathy, and then the other thing is mostly about strategy, which comes from having an understanding of the industry and the people that you're trying to serve. And in either case, I'm just focused on, am I meeting your needs? How can I measure that? How can I get the feedback to adapt and change? To make sure that we're getting the outcomes that make people happy and that make the change in the world that we want to see.
Awesome. What can you tell us about the Everyday Robot Project? What is public information that we can learn?
Yeah, I've got nothing for you beyond what's on the website. Like to keep myself safe, I would say check out the website. It's a really cool project. I really enjoy the team. Amazing culture there. Yeah. It's a great project. We're trying to make robots that help people. That is the crux of it. So yeah.
Awesome. So for that, is there getting in the customer mindset? Currently, is that only people internal to Google, or do you do external user studies? If you can't say, that's fine.
We do a lot of learning, from internal and external sources, right? We have a sci-fi book club that a lot of us participate in just to stay inspired, just like I was earlier, right? We have conversations, go to conferences, read books. There's so much that we can do to continuously learn about innovation in the technology, both on the hardware and software side, as well as seeing where automation has grown and taken strides, especially during the pandemic. There have been so many robots, doing so many jobs that we just don't want to risk human lives to get done. We've seen it in space, we've seen it underwater, we've seen it in farming. Like there's so many domains and there's so much out there to learn from. So what I appreciate about our team is that there are lots of people from different perspectives, from different places in the world, and they can bring up these different conversations. And what we do is a lot of brainstorming and a lot of experiments to try and see, what works for us and kind of what makes sense strategically.
Cool. Where do you see kind of the robotics industry being in like 10 years? Like what do you see potentially being on the market that doesn't really exist right now?
Yeah, that is a tough question. That's a tough question because, like I said, there's an extreme amount of diversity and kind of multidisciplinariness, if I can call it that, to robotics. I mean, we could have them be more involved in like doing work, but also there's a space for robotics in education and in art and in exploring. I mean, so it's really hard. I will say that I think that we'll continue to see advancements in natural user interfaces. I think speech is only going to get better and more natural, hopefully more inclusive of people's accents and languages even. I'd love to still see like a generally accessible like translating device. I know this isn't robotics, but like we've got the Bluetooth headsets, we got AirPods, like everyone's got earbuds now. I just don't understand why I can't just go to France and hear in English when people are speaking French to me. I know it happens in an app, right? And so eventually I think we'll go from these apps to a bit more physical computing, right? But before that, I'm sure we'll see a lot of legislation change around privacy and security to ensure that when these things happen, there aren't as many negative consequences as there has been recently. Like there definitely has been a reckoning and an evolution there. But yeah, I think that there's a lot to do. There aren't a lot of robots that you're seeing that are out there. I mean, outside of the Roomba, doing what they do, doing it consistently, not doing it as a demo or as a one-off, but like truly meeting a need in a concise and repeatable way in all of the dynamic environments that exist. So I think it's possible if you scope the problem small enough, but to have the robots that we've seen or that I've experienced in the movie in 10 years, probably a little too soon.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the American public will be accepting of robots beyond a Roomba type robot in the home?
I mean, I have to hope that they will be, right? I have to hope that education around technology and its benefits is something that continues to get communicated, but also that people's fears are addressed, right? And spoken publicly about. I think a lot of the times with a lot of technology, we talk about benefits, but we're not as transparent about the drawbacks, right? I liken it to like those old commercials about, I probably still do this, but I just don't watch a lot of public television. Like those commercials about any kind of medication where they're like, the whole conversation is slow and they're telling you about how their life has been improved by this medication. And then at the end of the commercial, they tell you about the side effects in like super fast language. And then the commercial ends and you don't even, hear that. Yeah. So I feel like that's kind of how technology a lot of the time has been communicated, that people don't know what they're trading off and giving up. And there's been a lot more, at least in social media, there's been a lot more transparency and people trying to make the information accessible about what's really happening so that people can be informed. But yeah, I think that, we're not going to get that acceptance unless the fear is addressed. But there is like a known ramp up of technology adoption. I think it will be harder with things that manipulate our physical space. So giving people a sense and the tools to control what they do and do not want to be happening, being transparent about that is going to be critical to acceptance. And then, Apple has shown us that beautifully designed things that fit well into our environments is another way to convince people that maybe this is something that they can enjoy.
For sure. As a reminder to our audience, if you have any questions you'd like me to ask Jasmine, just type them in the chat and we'll work them in. So let's see, what else do we got? So for how do you balance kind of you have this company, you have your product manager job. How do you balance across those things, time management? Any advice there?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, like everything has a time and a place. It's a bit, I would say I live a bit like a regimented life, right? Because things don't just happen. You're not just gonna find the time to do things. So a book that has been really helpful for me is called Living Forward. And it's a book that essentially gives you instructions on like how and why you should write a life plan. It helps divide your life into like a set of priorities that you're able to stack rank and readjust, right? So it could be your career, your friendships, your faith, your health, whatever it may be. And then you identify for yourself, right? What does the future look like? What does your ideal future look like in whatever scale makes sense for you? And then you write like, what does your reality today actually look like? And then it's up to you to figure out what can you put on your calendar or on your to-do list to close the gap between your reality and your future. It's just like super straightforward. And then you realize, okay, this is a lot of stuff. So you map that into like, okay, what does a week of activities look like for me to work towards my ideal future, for my health, for my family, for my career? And for me, I was surprised, like I want to do a lot. I want to make a lot of change in my life. I want to create a lot of new habits. I want to get a lot of stuff done. And surprisingly, it fit, right? It fit in that time, but I had to make adjustments of like, okay, maybe 5 years ago, I could play 10 hours of video games a week. And maybe I don't play 10, but I still find time to play 2 or 3. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to sacrifice completely that area of my life and like never watch TV again. But I do know that, I'm probably not going to read as many books a year if I want to, if I do that, or I probably won't run as far or as fast as I want to. So that was really helpful for me. But that's only been the last three years that I've been kind of following that life plan, iterating it, modifying it. Some things were really hard for me in the past that are now just, I don't even think about them because they're so integrated into my lifestyle. Lots of repeated calendar events, reminders. Like, I definitely leverage technology to take the mental load off of me. But prior to that, probably in my college days, I came up with this structure that I call the 3 Ps. And it's just about my structure for how I wanted to use my time well. And those P's stand for personal, professional, and philanthropic. I wanted to make sure that at least once a week, I was doing something for me. That could be playing a bunch of hours of video games, or it could be sleeping in on a Saturday, or going shopping for myself, or getting a massage. It could be something, but I want to make sure that I was prioritizing and making space for self-care in my life, no matter if it was finals week or, summer vacation. For me, I also wanted to make sure that I was growing professionally. So that could have been attending a professional organization, club, a meeting, a talk like this, where I'm getting to know people in my industry, working on my resume, taking courses on LinkedIn or on Coursera, something where I was growing and developing professionally to make sure that I am equipping myself with the skills I need to be successful in the career that I'm pursuing. And then philanthropic, how am I giving back to the community? How am I exposing myself to different walks of life and different experiences that are different from mine, right? In school, I would read to elementary school kids, or tutor people, or serve as a TA, or whatever it happened to be, to make sure that I'm finding this way to balance and humble and recognize the privilege and opportunities that I have, and that I can make a difference in the world, even if it's just enriching one other life. So that was my method from before. But yeah, I've got, like I said, a lot of alarms on my phone, a lot of time carved out to make sure that things get done, and an understanding of the priorities in my life, of what's more important. Is it more important for me to get some sleep, or is it more important for me to stay up all night and get this proposal out? These are the trade-offs that I'm equipped to make. I'm equipped to make because I have the information about what really matters to me. It was a long answer, but it's the foundation of being able to do all that I can do in the time that I have.
That's really great. And being able to do that level of self-reflection of, these are what my priorities are at the moment, and knowing that may change further down the line, and having the skills to adjust the plan for that. That's really,
exactly. It's
really
the flexibility, great. Right? Because I'm still fun and spontaneous, right? I still go on these random weekend trips and see my friends, and I'm not, oh, it's 1:05, it's time to drink a cup of tea. It's not as regimented as it sounds. There's actually a freedom in knowing that all the things that matter to me are going to get done. I'm going to talk to my family. I'm going to see the people that matter to me. I'm going to have space for work and working out, and then still have free time to do something else. We were just talking earlier about watching sketch comedy show. That's a part of my self-care, but I'm also integrating it with errands and to-dos. And so it feels like a good balanced life that I'm happy to live, rather than feeling busy or stressed or overwhelmed. It's not that I don't feel those things. It's just when I do, I recognize okay, maybe I put too much on my plate, or maybe I need to roll it back and set expectations with people who are relying on me, so that they're not disappointed when I am not in a position to come through on something. This is effective for work as well, or for running your own company, setting expectations, timelines, priorities for your organization. It's critical.
Yeah, definitely. What type of advice do you have for somebody that may be interested in getting into robotics but hasn't really done anything? What areas, what various careers, you're in product management, what other options are there kind of across?
There are so many. There's so many. And I almost feel like there's not a discipline that can't contribute to robotics in some way, because even if you're not a technical person, you could be a person who does marketing or legal or PR, or there's just there's a woman on my team who's working on getting her PhD in robotics, but she's also a professional dancer. She's ballet, and just so many different things. So I just don't think there's a limit to who is allowed to and how you can contribute. I think the biggest thing to show up with when you're trying to get into robotics is what do you want to do, or what is interesting and exciting to you, and then kind of finding your space in there. If you want to code, or be a software engineer, or be a mechanical engineer, or work on a build team or whatever, you can. There's nothing that stops you. And yeah, I'm happy to make connections to people that I know in my network who do a lot of different jobs within this space. I like being a product manager because I like deciding like what we should do and why we should do it. Like telling the stories and the motivation, making the plans and working with bringing all these diverse groups together to actually get something done that we can be proud of. I really enjoy that role. But yeah, it could be the best role, but there are so many out there. So what I typically, it's hard to give general advice about this. So typically, like, I'm always open to having conversations with people about kind of what their background is and what their future in robotics could look like. Oh, the other thing I'll say is, I think it's SVR, Silicon Valley Robotics, or IEEE have these newsletters on robotics so that you can subscribe to both of them. Yeah, subscribe to and get more information about news and things that are happening in the field, as well as jobs and open positions. Looking at the jobs, looking at not just the required skills, but kind of the expectations of the role. What does that day-to-day look like? Is a great way to know whether or not it could be for you.
Yeah, those are great resources. It's always great to kind of keep in touch with the industry and what companies are starting, who's getting acquired. I've definitely seen a kind of a proliferation of robotic startups within kind of the last like 4 or 5 years. There was kind of a period where most of them, well, when Google bought out a bunch back 2014 or whenever it was, 2013, 2014, I felt like there was kind of a little dip, but now I'm seeing it definitely come back up, especially with all the
It's true. There's so much more accessibility to hardware, right? People playing around with Arduinos and Internet of Things. Like for me, I personally love Adafruit. That's one of my favorite places to just buy little kits and parts, like, or SparkFun. Like there's so much out there now in terms of microcontrollers that are easily accessible, lots of template code out there. You can just get going and get started and make your own thing. And I highly encourage people to do that. I think that's how it starts, prototyping, figuring things out, understanding sensing in the world, and putting together a team that's motivated to solve the same types of problems that you are. It's very exciting. So I do like that there are a lot more companies out there, but there's actually a really great, I can't remember who put the report out there, but there's a really great report on like why robotics companies fail. And I would highly recommend anyone who's decided to start with to at least check it out. Not to like dishearten you or discourage you from pursuing it, but just so you can be equipped with understanding some of the roadblocks and some of the challenges that come with being in this industry. Because it's not like an app, right? Where you just code the app and ship it, right? It's a pretty expensive industry to be in.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever given much thought to starting your own robotics startup now that you've run a company in a different area, you have the company leading experience, and you have kind of a robotics background from your day job? Is that something you're considering possibly in the future?
I mean, I can't say that it's impossible, but I'm definitely happy where I am, like with my team, getting to know the ins and outs, being able to start from scratch. That's something I really enjoy being at X, is just the creativity and the energy and the culture there. And you're definitely taking notes for, how might I do this thing differently? And like you said, there's so many companies starting, and I just want to be passionate about, if I was to start another company, you really have to be passionate about the problem, right? Not just the solution. I think honestly, making a solution is the easiest part of starting a business. I think the hard part is really solving the problem and understanding like what different people need all around the world for that problem to really be solved. What approach you're planning to take, what your commitment to the problem really is. So yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's possible. I've got a lot to learn from a lot of people, and I'm looking forward to continuing to grow, but we'll see. Come back to me in 10 years.
Yeah, that's great. I love the be passionate about the problem. I could see where that gets you further than just, because your solution may not in the end be the right solution and you may have to pivot, but if you really care about the problem, that gives you the drive. We have a question from the audience. What are the most difficult parts about your job, and what are your favorite and least favorite parts about the job?
I think like the most difficult part of the job is that there is a lot to do. Like there's just so much work left to do, and ensuring that we're balancing both short-term and long-term investments whether it's in people or technology or ideas or experiments, that is the challenging thing, right? Oh, why are you working on this when you could be working on this? And how does an investment here unlock something, right? And how are we growing like more than just incremental, but how do we really accelerate change in the group? That's a hard thing. But luckily, like I have a really supportive product team where we have shared and overlapping responsibilities, but also individual areas of ownership. And we work together to put together those compromises. So my favorite part of the job is just having fun. It's just exploring and being creative in the role, because there is no like ABC formula of how to get it done. So when people have ideas, encouraging that, celebrating that, trying that, we've got like time set aside where people can just demo stuff that they are interested in or fix bugs that have been really annoying to them. And I love just like celebrating that creativity and being able to throw my wacky random ideas out there and people be like, that just might work. My least favorite part about the job. I think my least favorite part is like waiting, just wanting everything to be done and wanting everything to come together and having the patience to recognize, like I said before, it's going to take time for it all to come together, for enough things to be done to prove value or to prove some theory that we have, whether it's true or false, because a lot of the times I don't care if we're right or wrong, right? Because either way we learn, right? So I think the waiting and the wanting things to be done sooner rather than later. But I think that's just the product manager and me always being like, can we get it done sooner? Yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely. Yeah, it's always hard to wait for something. You're like, I see what it could be. How come we're not quite there yet? Another question: how do you plan robotics-based projects? Any suggestions on project management specifically for robotics-related projects?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's absolutely critical to have some unified goal, right? Just some end state that everyone understands, believes in, knows how to measure, that we're actually there. And like that end state or goal of the project is something that matters for reasons that everybody can articulate. I know that's like super general, but that's like, you just need that goalpost. And then like having conversations with the different people across your organization to understand, how do you contribute to that goal, right? What is our path to getting there, and how, like, what sub projects need to get done? And then just another layer, I don't know if this is a person who's a TPM asking, because it's a very TPM question, measuring like, not measuring, but mapping and tracking dependencies, right? So it could be like, oh, the hardware team needs this and the camera team needs this, but the hardware team has to make this camera thing before we have the driver. Then we've got to test the driver, which means the calibration team has to, like, understanding truly what like goes into that whole thing. But it doesn't have to be like me as the product manager, right? My goal is to be like, hey, we need to do this at this level of performance. These are the requirements. How we meet them and like making adjustments and tweaks to these requirements based on what is technically feasible. It's something that I have to show flexibility and openness to be able to do, as long as we're not compromising the experience or outcome that we're expecting. But that dependency management will definitely be your breakthrough or your downfall in terms of managing the project, keeping things, understanding how things are intertwined. And it's a very complex and multidisciplinary space. So it's going to be a huge challenge for sure.
In terms of kind of that methodology, like, is for robotics, is a Scrum or Agile type methodology, does that work well? Is it more waterfall? Is there some sort of hybrid or other one I'm not familiar with that's best?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, definitely not waterfall. Definitely not waterfall, but like not completely waterfall. But it's some weird hybrid. And it really depends on teams, right? Because let's say you're on a build team where you're physically assembling a robot and the pieces just go together in an order. They like grind out, you know what I mean? They grind out robots or devices. Like, there's just, the parts have to come from here, and then they go to this team, and then, they wire them, and then they do this and they solder, and it just has to work like that because of that piece. But like the software team, absolutely not. There's code coming in left and right from, so many different subsystems that people just have to not break each other. Shout out to the QA teams out there who, make this dynamic it's more like jazz, right? This dynamic performance even possible. But yeah, I would just say it's team by team, right? It's whatever works for your team. I'm never the type of product manager who's going to come in there and dictate a process that works for you, right? It's just, is the process enabling the outcomes that we want and the timelines that we want? And if it's not, let's change the process, right? It has to work for us versus the other way around.
Does your team do regular kind of retrospectives to kind of tune and adjust that process based off of how you've seen it go for whatever sprint or time frame you're working on, milestones?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have like two kind of retros. One is about progress, right? One is like, let's share demos, let's share updates, let's score our progress, like that type of stuff. And, it's fun. It's great to give visibility, to highlight, to have people practice presenting. It's great. And also just to know where things are outside of the daily stand-ups. That's one kind of retrospective. And then we have another retrospective that's more about how we work, right? It's not like what work did you get, but how is the work getting done? How did you feel about this reorg? Or how did you feel about this new news in the industry, or this new change to our team? Or, how do you feel about that major goal that we're all working towards? Do you hate it? Do you not believe in it at all? Like, people can bring their open and honest feedback about the environment in which we work and the techniques and processes we use to work without talking necessarily about their specific project if they don't want to. And that kind of openness is what like allows us to connect, I'll say, as people rather than as coworkers, Yeah, the truth and honesty there, the safety, psychological safety that we have within at least that small community that I have that other retro with is it's really great. Also, we do it with another team that we work closely with. Like, so between our two teams, we have a lot of dependencies. And so to be like, yeah, actually it really pissed me off that this thing was just late and late and late. And, and someone's able to, we call them self-owned, able to step up and be like, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I knew it was going to be late and I should have said something. And I knew you're not a person who's going to get mad at me, for doing that, but just, maybe someone else could have stepped in and helped me out, or you could have moved on and focused on something else if you weren't waiting on me. So, it's a great way to keep the team health in a good spot.
Yeah. Communication is definitely important across teams, especially as interdisciplinary as robotics is, and as you say, all the different dependencies. So for X, what is with COVID? How much has things gone to being at home? Are you allowed back in the office yet? How have you guys been managing that?
Yeah, I'm still personally, I started during the pandemic, so I've been 100% remote the entire time, which is, it's a challenge for a hardware, role, but yeah, I don't need to physically touch hardware to do my job. It definitely makes it better and more fun. And I think I have a better understanding of what the capabilities really are when you're physically there. But, like everyone, just trying to be adapted, trying to be flexible. California is doing really well. A lot of our teams in California. Yeah, California's been doing really well managing COVID, people getting vaccinated. It's been going really well. And so there are definitely people who go into the office, mechanical engineers and build team and all of that stuff. So like there are people in there. I haven't gone yet. I hope to go, but you got to follow all the regulations, which are changing daily, week over week. I'm in no rush. This is the only thing I've ever known, and it's been working for me. But yeah, I do imagine being able to do a happy hour or being able to play board games in real life with my coworkers who I've only seen from like the chest up. Yeah. Knowing how tall everyone is. That's something we recently just but we have no idea how tall anybody is. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually met one of my coworkers recently who was hired during the pandemic, and she's normally on the East Coast and happened to be out here. And I met her in person. It's like, in my head, I was like, oh yeah, I thought you would be a little bit taller in person. But yeah, that's something, yeah, you can't really get from the Zoom aspect. Does the audience have any other questions while I'm thinking through something? Let's see, I had prepared some and I think I asked most of them. So you touched on a little bit earlier, but you you were asked to be on, basically be interviewed by Oprah. What was that experience like?
It was very fun. It definitely was a surprise, came out of the blue. Like I said, they just called me up and was like, hey, are you interested in being in the show? And I was actually like in a post basketball practice nap. So I was like, hold on, let me transfer you over to business development to take this call. And business development at the time was my mom. So I give my mom the phone. She works all the details while I'm napping, and she wakes me up and she's like, you're going to be on Oprah. It was pretty cool. They flew me, my sisters, my parents out to Chicago. We had a great, trip there where they fed us and clothed us and took us shopping. And being there, being with Oprah, she's very kind. I mean, she's an amazing journalist, as you know. So she asked all the hard questions, and we actually have a very shared story. So she got a relaxer to try and straighten her hair and lost her hair. And that's exactly what happened to me. She knows what it was like to just have your hair just be falling out of your head, your scalp to be damaged, and to be like, okay, I did this because somebody told me that the way that I am naturally is not enough. So I definitely felt validated, felt seen by her creating this platform for me to share my story. But then I also felt extremely proud of myself to be on a show with other incredible kids who were just like doing their best, being awesome. It was an amazing experience, right? Then after we did the studio recording, they had a team come out to my house, which was also my factory, which was also my office, to come in and shoot some B-roll. And that was just a great time meeting with the camera crew and the film crew and the producers to get the shots and everything. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it. It was a great experience. It was an incredible exposure. And, sometimes you can see different spikes in sales as the syndicated show like plays reruns or things like that. What was also really incredible is that a couple years later, maybe eight years later or more, we ended up back on the show to do like a where are they now follow up with me, and things had just gotten better. I went from being in high school and working in my basement to having a factory. I built a whole team. I was in grad school at the time. I was working at Microsoft. It was incredible how that one moment built my confidence, validated my story, kind of showed to other people, like through her influence, like this is a legit organization that should be respected and like given a chance to succeed and make an impact in people's lives. And I just took that and I tried to run with that energy, with that belief that doesn't matter if I'm a woman, doesn't matter if I'm, African American, it doesn't matter. I can do anything, right? I can learn, I can grow, I can make stuff happen. And so to be in a field like robotics that it can feel very intimidating from the outside, and just be like, if I don't know, I'll learn, or I'll ask a question, or I'll figure it out. I, definitely have some level of intelligence that, gives me this good potential, but a lot of the times just working hard for the things that I want, and I'm relying on other people to fill in those gaps, and trusting other people to be partners and friends and supporters of whatever I'm trying to pursue.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned having a factory for Eden Body Works. How much has your robotics background helped? Like, how much automation is in the factory? Does having a little bit of background in robotics help you be like, oh yeah, let's go on that route, that type of automation or whatever?
If I was like 100% full time, maybe I would dive into that level of detail and be like, oh no, we should be using like universal robot. Like, no, right? That's just, it's like a know your role, right? Like my role in the business primarily around formulation, like spokesperson, making sure we're doing the right thing, solving the right problems, showing up in the right spaces, landing the right partnerships. I don't try and like impress my will on the production team, right? Like ops has got it on lock. They get the product made, they get it where it needs to go. I don't step in there. But yeah, in my home, when I had my home factory though, I did do a lot of research. Like we probably bought 2 or 3 different kinds of filling machines and tested their usability and their throughput. And I had this whole thing back when we used to use styrofoam popcorn, sorry, planet Earth, to like fill our packages. We had this like huge little funnel that you could just squeeze this nozzle. I think my mom built this to like get the peanuts into the box. I mean, it was just, all assembly lines and everything like that. It was interesting to build a factory from scratch, but partnering with someone who had more than 30 years experience, who was like used to working with natural ingredients versus chemicals, like someone who has safe operations and can produce at the scale that is required from us. I just like, that point, you got to trust the experts. Of course, I visited, right? And like took a look and met the team and, you know everybody on a first name basis. So I'm definitely informed and plugged in, but it's definitely outside of the scope of my domain to be like, maybe we should try something new.
Yeah, I could see that. It's definitely good to know when to delegate, when to let other people be the expert and own it so that you can manage all your different responsibilities.
Yeah, but when they do tell me things like, oh, if we want to use this bottle versus that bottle, that's gonna, increase production time. Like I can trust them. Like I can understand because I know, like, yes, if everything was the same, then we'd be able to, reuse lines that are already set up. And if I want to introduce a new line that has new packaging and a new, way of being assembled or whatever it happens to be, that there's going to be some technical challenges there. I can have empathy for them and their struggles and, make the compromises that are necessary to either accept the longer production time because this is just how it needs to be made, or say, you know what, we can streamline this in a certain way and change the packaging or the formulation in a certain way to make this easier so that we can buy something in bulk, or to tweak, to change, to get the right results.
That's awesome. Yeah. Such a fascinating background and different experiences. I can't imagine trying to balance kind of running a company and being in the robotics industry as a product manager. I mean, I feel like I don't even have enough time for just my regular day job.
Yeah, there are boundaries, right? There are definitely days where I'm like, okay, full-time job, I've given you 40 hours or 50 hours or 60s in the worst case. That is all I can give to you without compromising and sacrificing other spaces, right? I think about, becoming a wife or becoming a mother one day and recognizing like, I'm going to have to give this time to someone else. And for now, I'm like investing it in me. And there has to be room in my life for more than just work, right? But work is a significant part of how I am making change in the world, but it's not everything, right? And to tell my manager, like, look, I've got 5 things on my plate, only 3 are getting done. Let's have a conversation about which 3 you want that to be, has been an exercise in confidence, but also, like I said earlier, in self-care and in transparency and like setting appropriate expectations. So you might be putting too much pressure on yourself or too much on your plate, or maybe there are things that you like don't actually have to do that you can just not do and no one will care and or notice. Yeah, I'm always looking for ways to not do stuff. So I think as long as you're enjoying your life and that you feel like you're an active participant in what you're going through, like that's the right way to go about it. If you're in a position where life is just happening to you, I highly recommend you like take a moment, if you're able, to pause, to readjust, to reset your priorities and figuring out what is actually going to work for you. Because like breakdowns and burnouts, they're real and they make it so much harder to recover and to get to a spot where, you're just living a healthy life that meets your needs and allows you to be there for the people that you love and care about.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice in terms of how to kind of set those boundaries and expectations with a manager? Like how to have those conversations, what makes it go well?
Yeah, there's a lot of like probably introspection that is useful, right? Knowing what you can and cannot do, right? Or what your constraints are. So here's like a real example. I've got a big presentation next week, but I also have my second COVID shot next week. And the presentation is the day after. And I was like, ooh, okay, it's Friday. I have like a couple days. What's going to happen if I'm too sick to present? This was my question to my manager. I was like, what are your thoughts? Like, I'm not telling him to tell me, but I'm like, what are your thoughts on what we should? Some of the strategies that I've thought about are during this week leading up to the meeting, I can like co-rehearse with someone else who can have my back and present the content, or we can reschedule. I know this is an important person, but we could also reschedule, or, whatever. I can make a video of me doing the presentation in advance. And that just means I have less time to make it perfect. Like I'm trying to like be ready for something. Do you know what I mean? And my manager was like, thank you so much for bringing this up. Like, I appreciate you making sure we don't have some last minute, things. Like they were like, no, I want to prioritize you being able to have a live conversation, celebrating your work. There are some managers that would have been like, yeah, if you don't show up, I'll just do it, or, you know what I mean? Or like, no, we can't reschedule. You have to show up. You have to, but like a manager that doesn't allow me to prioritize my health is probably like not a good manager. Do you know what I mean? So it's like a real situation. So like our priority is for you to be there and do it live. And like worst case scenario, you let us know Wednesday night or Thursday morning or whatever it happens to be, like whatever this cutoff time is, if you're able to. Otherwise, we'll adjust and we'll accommodate you. You know what I mean? Like I had to be transparent because like otherwise I'd just be stressed about it, wondering, hoping that I feel good enough to show up to the presentation, potentially sick. And just people be like, what is she doing? Like, that's a bad presentation. We don't trust her. We don't respect her. Like, she couldn't even get through her presentation. Like, I want to set myself up for myself up for success. And I feel like sometimes people with their managers stay in this state of not knowing, right? Not knowing what the expectations are or where they can flex or where they can take a step back or what really needs to get done. And so having that openness and having those conversations as soon as possible. Like, I mean, I'm talking about day one when you join the job or even before you join the job, kind of understanding kind of what that relationship is going to look like. Like I asked my manager, what's your management style? Like, do you like to be over communicated with? Are you going to give me a lot of runway and I can do whatever I want? Like, what type of relationship am I about to get into? And does that work? Does that work for me? You know, in our one-on-ones, are you talking the whole time? Or are you listening to me? You know, these types of things. Like we have an agenda that we both contribute to. My items go at the top because it's my one-on-one. And, you know, he's like, if I need time to talk to you about something else, I will book some other time. You know what I mean? There's that respect there. That does a lot. But then in terms of boundaries, like work ends when it ends. I've got to make dinner. I've got to be with my friends. I've got to, you know, see my family. And sometimes it's hard because there are projects going on, but that's what really motivates me to not slack off during the time that I have allotted for work. Because if I slack off now, then really I'm sacrificing time that I would have spent doing something else.
So for your manager, were you able to ask that question during the interview process? Did you know who your direct manager was going to be, or did you switch managers after you joined? How did you kind of decide for that?
Yeah, so sometimes, I've been in both positions, right? Where I have known the hiring manager or gotten in connection with them, or because usually they are the ones that are like filtering you out before you go do a panel. So luckily you can ask, you know, and see that person. But if you can't, I like to check and see. It just really depends on the organization and like how their placement strategy is. But sometimes the people who are interviewing you are people who you'll be working with day to day, right? Stakeholders or partner teams, or even like members of your team, and asking them, someone asked me a similar question, like, what do you like the most about your job? What do you like least about being on this team? Like, what should I know? Like on the real, what should I know about the challenges that this organization is facing? Or like, what is the potential? Like, what does success look like? And what is the potential? Because you're committing to pour your time and your energy towards working through that and pushing that forward. So I don't think it's bad to ask these hard questions, right? It really just depends on how you are positioned, right? There are some people who are just like, I'll want a job, I need a job, I'll take any job, and they just take a job and might end up in a situation that doesn't work for them. And then there are some people who, you know, could be at a point where they have a job, it's meeting their needs, they're kind of okay, and they're just looking, right? And to leave, you have to have all your boxes checked. So you have to know stuff like, what compensation are you looking for? What benefits are you looking for? What organizations do you want to be able to partner with? What is the work-life balance? Do you expect me to be checking emails at 9 p.m.? Because it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I don't have email on my phone. I just don't do it. Call me if it's an emergency, but like, I'm not a surgeon, so I just can't imagine there being an emergency where you're like violating my personal time. Anyway, it happens, but you know, setting those boundaries is really about doing what you feel like is best for you, and being flexible, right? If your manager doesn't know what you need or what you're going through or what you're struggling with, there's no way that they can even have the opportunity to support you and encourage you. They cannot read your mind. You cannot read your mind. So having those open, candid conversations is the best way to be in a position that is mutually beneficial.
Yeah, definitely great advice. We are getting towards the end. We have about 5 more minutes, if there's any last questions from the audience. I guess kind of to wrap us up, is there any kind of last comments, general advice you'd like to give to the women in robotics community? Anything upcoming really exciting you want to share, or any events you want to promote?
I appreciate this. I should have been more prepared. I will be speaking at the Women in Product Conference this year, which is amazing. I'm super excited. And if you're a person who is either senior or new or just thinking about becoming a product manager in any discipline, honestly, highly recommend going to that. But yeah, I just wanted to be transparent and say that I make lots of mistakes. I feel like I haven't had the chance to say that. Like I get things wrong. Um, and yeah, and stuff happens. And sometimes I do work too much or slack off too much. Like a lot of, there's a lot of learning, right? I would say growth is the key part of it, and being flexible and being able to change. But no, I do mess up and people call me out, and I try and be responsive to both feedback, receptive to both feedback, positive, negative, and compliments. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's hard to be like, no, good job. It's like, oh yeah, but I could have done, I know, just good job, right? Okay, just like receive the goodness. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know how to code to be in robotics, just common myths. You can dress however you want. You can be from wherever you are from. You can look like however you look, whatever ability you are, like you can do it. You can do it. And let's like let's like become friends and make it happen, because it's going to be a really influential field, both tech and beauty, extremely influential fields for society. And if you want to be a part of making the world a better place, a different place, a place that you want to live and that it will be around, yeah, then like engage. I highly encourage that, and just like live a life that works for you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time and your advice and sharing your background and stories. It's been great. So we will get this onto YouTube hopefully in the near future. I normally do a teeny bit of editing, but thank you everyone for attending. Thanks again, Jasmine, for joining us and volunteering to be part of this. If anyone else would like to be featured in a future Ask Me Anything, let me know and I can help get it scheduled for Women in Robotics. Again, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Laura. I really enjoyed being a part of this community, not just to, have friends, which is great, but, sharing jobs, sharing resources, encouraging each other, just seeing the group grow and that there are people there. I remember when we used to do the Women in Robotics talks at different robotics companies. I think that was phenomenal, and I cannot wait for us to do that again. So thanks for the opportunity to share my story and support for all the other women in our community.
Yes. All right. Bye, everyone.